Zam, if I was to tell my younger self that one day when I was an old man, I would interview a man named Pavel, I'd get pretty excited. How about you?
Yeah, I think we'd all get pretty excited when we hear that name, Pavel. But there, it's exciting. We're going to be talking about hockey, but not the Pavel that probably either one of us were expecting to talk to.
Alrighty, welcome back to Unanchored. Shahid Devji here, Zam Kareem here as well, and we almost wore the same shirt today. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, we're both wearing blue, but it's not the same shirt, not the same blue. Just avoided it. You know what? Dating back years and years. This is not the first time we almost wore the same blue. I remember when we were in high school, there was this fair near your house, and we both had the same blue sweater. And you wore it, and I was contemplating wearing it, and lucky I didn't, because we would have looked like some two goofs. And hey, 25 years later, and we look like some goofs anyway.
Oh, for sure, we're still goofs, and I'm pretty sure we went to another event where we both wore white T-shirts as well. So,
well, that's I think a bit more forgivable, but the exact same baby blue sweater, that seems a bit planned. And
yeah, you're right. It's not, thinking back, and wouldn't have been the best look. And good thing we're not wearing the same thing today. And before we move forward, I just want to thank those that have been paying attention and listening to the pod these last number of weeks that we've been on, and been getting so much positive feedback, even from people like,
not that you need that for your ego, Zammer.
No, it's just great to know that people are consuming our content. People are getting a chance to enjoy the podcast and enjoy the interviews that we're recording, and as much as we are. And thanks for listening, and share it with your friends and family. Subscribe on Facebook and other on Facebook, YouTube. Sorry.
Yeah, you're still getting your social lingo down,
Right.
subscribing on Facebook and such. And
Yes.
but you're right. It's been fun to do, and it's been fun to talk about with people, and we're glad people are enjoying it. This is the last of our pre-recorded interviews. So to launch this podcast, we recorded a bunch of interviews to make sure we would have enough to get out there and keep the momentum. And when we said in our little bit at the beginning that our guest is named Pavel, and if you don't know who Pavel Barber is, he's got a interesting story, and we're excited to share that. But why younger Shahid and younger Zam might have been excited to interview Pavel, back in the day, is because we both grew up hockey fans and Canucks fans, and Pavel Bure was the Pavel du jour, and any hockey player with the name Pavel is going to be a skilled one, likely from Russia, not Canada, but this one we're interviewing today is Canadian, super skilled, and he's got a really interesting story as to how he became successful, how he makes a living these days, and who he makes a living working with. So really excited to talk about that. But end of, call it phase one or whatever you want to call it of Unanchored, and it's been a lot of fun. I'm excited to see what comes next for this show.
Oh, it's been a ton of fun, and excited to launch phase two, and hopefully we'll have a bunch of great new interviews coming your way shortly. It's been such a growth experience for me, just to get back on air again. It's been about a year since I had last been, a year and a half since I'd last been on air back in Montreal, and it's just great to have those conversations, great to just talk about things, and kind of just talk about things that are happening in the world, and important things. And it was really important that during this period of time, we talked about the Black Lives Matter and racial justice protests that were happening and continuing to happen. And it's important that we continue to also, during this period of time, which we're still living through, this COVID-19 pandemic, just kind of check in with each other, check in with ourselves, and even give ourselves just a little bit of a distraction from the day-to-day, whether it be work or looking for apartments, looking just kind of the day-to-day life. And on that front, happy to say that finally found an apartment.
That's great. But despite that, you've said that in our upcoming episodes, you might still be in multiple locales recording. For those who watch on video, you will have noticed that Zam has had many a backdrop throughout the first. I don't even know how many episodes we've recorded at this point, but you've had more backdrops than we have recorded episodes. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think we'll continue that trend. And but it's just sometimes I like to mix up my well, sometimes it's out of a necessity, sometimes it's out of pure comfort, just to now I finally found a space that's comfortable. But I'll once we get into our apartment, then that'll definitely be a place where I'll probably set up a workspace as well. But I'll probably end up using this space here because it's nice and big and has really good light as well.
Yeah.
Unlike my office in our new apartment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, podcasts generally the backdrop doesn't matter. So as
No,
long as
for
you
sure.
got a microphone, we're good to go. And it's interesting the timing of this episode with Pavel Barber. It looks like, and we talked about it for weeks and weeks on this show when we had a kind of hockey themed guest prior, but when hockey would come back, and us as hockey fans, even as early as or as recently as our last episode, we were talking about things starting up again, and you enjoying the content that you're consuming, talking about hockey once again. And whereas I was thinking, just tell me when they're on the ice, but getting back on the ice is actually getting. Teams are back on the ice. If you're a hockey fan, you know that, and if you're not, well, if you know someone who is, they're going to be watching hockey and other sports again quite soon. Knock on wood, and so it's good timing that we're talking to and releasing this episode with Pavel Barber, because I think the appetite is there, and there'll be more and more hockey content coming out on the internets and interwebs these days, and it'll certainly be a lot coming from Pavel Barber. So yeah, that's it's good timing. I came to know of Pavel Barber prior to actually knowing that he was this big social media star. I worked for the Canadian Field Hockey, Association, and the men's Canadian Field Hockey team, and he was a part of that team. And prior to me getting there, and he had recently left, his name was still in the system, his picture was still in the system, and so I just knew of this dude named Brandon Barber, and the guys on the team still told me about him and how he's kind of moved on to not necessarily bigger and better things, but things that a lot of hockey players growing up in Canada would dream to be doing, and that's playing ice hockey in front of an audience and making money from it, and that was kind of the beginning of his journey. And once I learned more about him, it was pretty fascinating.
Oh, for sure. And he does some really cool things. He's a pure skill, like stick handling coach. And we talked about how he works with some of the best in the NHL right now, and works with some up and coming talents as well. And we talk about it during our interview, that how he works with this Japanese kid who is an up and coming talent in Japan, and having a chance to see some of his videos through Pavel's social media channels, it was just really cool to see how high-end talent comes through, no matter where in this world someone can live. Strong hockey talent can come from anywhere, and not just Canada or United States or Northern Europe. So it's really cool to see.
Yeah, so for those of you who aren't hockey fans and don't know about Pavel Barber, here's why I would say you should stick around and listen to this interview. One, it's a great story of knowing your passions and following your passions and sticking with it and finding a way to make your passion and dream come true. Two, it's a great story about the business of social media and how you can actually make it a living, and how that kind of worked for Pavel Barber. And then three, just a really entertaining and interesting guy for those who aren't hockey fans. But for those who are hockey fans, we definitely dig into some of the specifics of sort of styles and players that he likes and grew up watching, and what he thinks of the current players and the current style of the game, where it's going, etc., and some of the cool experiences that he had with some NHL players. So it's a fairly balanced chat, and I'm ready to get into it. What about you, Zab?
Oh, let's get into it.
Pavel Barber is a hockey sensation. His name might be as well known as some of the best NHL hockey players of the day. He has more followers on Instagram than Stanley Cup winner and Olympic gold medalist Jonathan Toews, and is only a mere couple 100,000 behind the NHL's best player, Connor McDavid. You could say he's living the dream, and you might be right, or at least you'd be pretty darn close. Barber grew up in Ontario dreaming of playing in the NHL, but along the way, other sports came calling, and he found himself playing field hockey and floorball for Canada's national teams. And while his time in both of those sports gave him and continue to give him memories and experiences other athletes could only dream of, it's ice hockey that was and is his passion. So while playing those other sports, he continued to play hockey, making videos online showing off his skills, and in doing that, rightfully earned the hockey name Pavel. And the hockey world took notice. Barber's online presence exploded on YouTube, then Instagram, and now TikTok. His highly creative and entertaining videos focusing on stick handling not only earned him praise online, but also got the attention inside professional hockey circles. He's made videos with NHL players like Alexander Barkov and has had a roster of NHL and elite athletes as his pupils in his skills coaching business. So while he may not have made it to the NHL, hockey is his life and his business. Not too bad. To talk about his path to success, what he learned along the way, and of course, hockey, we're happy to welcome Pavel Barber to Unanchored. So Pavel, thanks for taking some time out of your day to join us. How are you doing?
Pretty good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. We were just talking off air that we're all cooped up because of this COVID-19 pandemic, and rightfully so. But how are things going for you with the sports world on hold? Obviously, sports is such a big part of what you do and who you are. What's life like for you these days?
Well, I gotta say it's embarrassing that I don't know what to do with my time when I'm watching TV at night with no sports on, no hockey games to watch. I'm kind of on the couch twiddling my thumbs, thinking of stuff to do. So, it's definitely impacted me quite a bit. My work had to cancel 2 hockey camps, and obviously that stuff has slowed down. But I'm making it by, so it's not too bad.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wondered what it would be like for me. Obviously, being a huge hockey fan, and I don't ever miss a Canucks game. Even if I have to watch it on PVR, I watch it. I don't ever miss a Canucks game. Thought I'd miss it a lot more than I do these days now, but I don't know what that says about me these days. But as hockey fans, we've experienced shortened seasons before, and even ones that have been entirely missed. Does this feel the same or different to you? I would assume I know what your answer is, because this is a very different situation. But with hockey being gone, does it feel like you've experienced this before?
No, it's so different. Like you said, there's been shortened seasons and stuff like that, but this one just stopped so abruptly and so unpredictably. Yesterday was supposed to be the first day of playoffs, and it's like just knowing that in the back of your mind, you're just like, you feel like you've lost something so dear to you, because that's the best time of the year for me. Just watching the playoffs, the intensity picks up, but it's one of those things that it caught everyone off guard. Obviously, fans of all sports, so we gotta make do with what we got. But this is so unprecedented what's happening right now.
Yeah. So what's keeping you busy then?
Well, I'm doing a lot of content stuff, so trying to stay busy and stay active on my social media feed. So actually, in the back, you can see I bought this hockey net to put in my house, so I can at least shoot a little bit of stuff. I have some buddies of mine who actually have a synthetic ice rink in their backyard, so I've been going there to kind of keep myself sane a little bit. But other than that, just trying to get outside away from everyone, but just getting exercise, making sure I'm doing that. It's really been keeping me going.
Just gonna wait for Zam to jump in here.
Sure.
So you are creating a lot of new content right now, even though the NHL and most professional sports league are paused right now.
Yeah. I'm trying to, obviously it's the biggest difficulty right now when there's no actual hockey going on, but you're either digging into the vault or you're finding stuff around the web that is happening. Like yesterday, Jeremy Roenick did a hilarious challenge.
Yeah.
Sharing stuff like that. Obviously, people are getting desperate, getting creative. There's a lot of good that's coming out of it. There's a lot of funny, good content out there, and just trying to stay relevant and keep people entertained and give them the hockey stuff that they miss so much right now.
So what keeps you motivated? This is like a tough time for a lot of people where we're trying to figure out what the heck we can do with our time. A lot of us, as Shahid was saying, are cooped up in our homes. How do you get motivated to I guess find new content to do, whether it be inside your house or at your buddy's synthetic ice rink?
Yeah, I think for me, I just think of, what life's going to be like when all this is over. That's all I'm thinking about every single day. Like, if I woke up tomorrow and all this was over, what situation would I want to be in? And, knowing that everyone's going through difficult times right now. And it's a very unique situation where we're all left, pretty much everyone not doing their jobs right now, all this free time to do whatever they want, which is kind of a silver lining in the whole thing. Obviously, you lose a lot of money and things are pretty tough, but the silver lining is a lot of us are getting that free time we never got before, and we're
For
we're stuck with that challenge of what do I do to fill this free time. And I think you learn a lot about yourself as a person in times like this. So I think I get motivated just thinking about that.
Oh, that's awesome, and obviously with the NHL's influence in hockey, and that's a big miss, as you were talking about today being supposedly a day, or would otherwise be day 2 or day 3 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. So obviously you're not seeing skilled clients right now. Would this time of year normally be picking up for you or slowing down?
This time would be picking up. Springtime, usually you get a lot of spring teams reaching out. You have 2 spring breaks. You have the U.S. spring break and then the Canadian spring break, where I usually fill up a camp. I usually do one in Chicago every year, and then one in Canada every year. But obviously couldn't do those, so it's definitely a time of the year that picks up for me. And summer is like nonstop for me. It's just bouncing from city to city. So I really am hoping this thing's over by then.
So obviously, so many people know you as Pavel Barber, the guy with 223,000 YouTube subscribers and millions of views and 500,000 followers on Instagram. You're the guy with the crazy dangles and the funny videos. But you weren't always known for that, I assume. What was life like before Pavel for you?
Well, before Pavel was Brandon Barber, my legal name, which even growing up, honestly, like when I was in grade like 2 and up, like no one called me Brandon. It was always Barber. So
Right.
it would probably take me a while if someone called me Brandon to respond anyway. But before then, from 2012 to 2015, I was on the Canadian field hockey team doing that. And I just had a job on the side to pay the bills, working at an ice hockey rink at the University of British Columbia there. So that was right before all this kind of exploded. I was doing those 2 things.
Yeah, I was reading an article that you're a quadruple athlete. Not only did you play, ice hockey and field hockey, floorball is something you've played, but also
Yep.
baseball. So you mentioned that you played field hockey, and you're no longer a part of the program. But I came across your name when I started working for Field Hockey Canada in 2014, and you weren't a part of the program at that time, but you probably weren't too far removed from being a part of that national program. How does field hockey fit within your story? Because as far as I understand it, you're an ice hockey first guy, and maybe even all the other sports first. But how did it influence what you're doing today? Because what I really came across in field hockey, which it was my first exposure to field hockey when I was working for that organization, is that the skill required to play field hockey is unlike really any other sport I've played. Like I played hockey my entire life, ice hockey and road hockey and roller hockey and ball hockey. And I found field hockey to be as skilled as any of those. Did you find that helped you in where you went after that?
I think so. Yeah. I agree with you. It's one of the most difficult sports ever. And anyone who plays field hockey in North America, you always hear like the comment, like, isn't that a female sport or something? Because here it's not really a popular male sport at all. Whereas anywhere else in the world, pretty much you go, other than like Sweden, Finland, and Russia, like they call field hockey hockey. Like that is their primary form of hockey. And it's a huge sport across the world. But playing that certainly helped my hands out quite a bit, opened my eyes to new techniques, definitely helped me refine some things and get my creative juices flowing a little bit more. But it was definitely a sport that banged up my body pretty good with how short the stick is, how much you have to be hunched over. Actually ended up tearing a hip flexor while playing because of that. And just biomechanically speaking, one of the worst sports for your body. And ice hockey was definitely a lot easier on the body with the
Yeah.
fact that you can kind of glide on skates.
I was surprised that you guys, when playing field hockey, didn't wear more equipment, because it's like literally like swinging a baseball bat or golf club right in front of someone's face, as you're saying, because they're hunched over. So surprised that there weren't more, facial and upper body injuries. But there's a lot of etiquette in the sport too, and I don't want to spend too much time on field hockey, because obviously we're here to talk about the Frozen game, even though we're getting to the spring and summer. But what I did want to touch on for a minute here is, during my time with Field Hockey Canada, the men's national team qualified for the Olympics for the first time in 8 years and went to the Rio 2016 Summer Games. I'm sure you had friends, or I'm assuming you had friends, go through that Olympic journey and go to the games. Did you watch them go through qualification? Did you watch the games? And what was that like doing that, if you did?
Yeah, definitely. I watched every single game on delay, so they had I didn't get to watch it in real time, but it was amazing. I mean, just knowing the guys, what they go through. It's one of the things, because it's not a very well-known sport. You have to really be in the program to know the dedication that they have to put in, the amount of work you have to put in, especially for us, because we had all of our Olympic funding, which was like $900,000 taken away from us leading into that Olympics. So we were pretty much going on bare bones there. So when I watched them, go through that qualification and end up on top, I was going crazy, like texting all the guys and just so happy for them, because what these guys give up, and they don't get a lot of money for it. It's all passion, why these guys are doing it. It's all for the love of the game. And it was great to see them actually, come out with an Olympic dream there.
Absolutely. And my last question on this topic is did it sting a little? Because I know for me, I was a TV reporter. I left broadcasting, and when I see my friends on TV doing the things that I once wanted to do, even though I stepped away of my own accord, it still isn't the easiest thing to watch. Is that something that stings? But or are you happy enough with what you're doing now? Is this the dream that you've always had, and not that?
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I actually thought it would sting a lot more, just knowing that. But when it happened, personally, I never thought I was one of the top guys, so I didn't think I would have been on that Olympic team anyway. So I didn't think it stung me too bad after that. It was just all feeling really good for the boys and how they accomplished all this, and I kind of felt just honored to have played with them for all those years, and the fact that I could watch them actually chase their Olympic dream, it was pretty awesome.
Okay, so that's the best way that it could have played out. So that's awesome to hear. So we haven't really heard you describe it yourself. Tell us who you are and what you do. If you're able to sum it up, obviously a lot of the listeners will know who you are and what you do. But for those who don't, who is Pavel Barber and what do you do?
Yeah, so Pavel Barber is basically, the title is social media influencer. That would be the online title. And then my title for hockey and training would be a stick handling specialist. So I specialize in the art form of stick handling in hockey. And throughout my camps, we work on all skills, skating being the number one skill. But it's a more specialized camp where we look at puck control, whether that is skating with the puck, whether that's one-on-one evasive moves, whether it's puck protection, anything related to puck carrying skills. That's what I specialize in.
So now, are you, Barbara? Are you still playing other competitive sports or involved in other competitive sports as well? We talked about field hockey. We talked about ice hockey. I watched a video of yours with a skate blade company, roller blading company, and you were talking about playing some other sports as well. Is it something you still have time for, or is hockey your 365-day a year passion and job?
Yeah, I still play floorball Team Canada. It's definitely far less demanding than field hockey was, just because it's not an Olympic sport, so you don't have to all train together, 5, 6 days a week and all that. So I'm still playing for them, but the vast majority of my time is spent doing the training because I'm in and out of the city all the time, flying around doing camps. And when I am here, I'm working quite a bit with the on ice stuff, and that's where I want to be. I love the sport so much, and that was one of the things when I was playing field hockey. I realized it was time to hang them up when my mind was just thinking like I would way rather be on the ice right now, chasing this. So that's when I knew I had to call it quits.
Well, there's one of your clients or someone that you featured on your YouTube channel. It has kind of fascinated me for a few years now, and I've been wondering about this kid, Iguchi.
Hmm.
You've featured him a few times, and when he was like 10 and 11 years old, and that was like 5 6 years ago. So wondering, where is he now, and is he someone that you're still working with, and are we going to be getting a chance to see him play in North America?
Yeah, so right now he's 15 years old. He's still playing in Japan. He just finished actually playing in the World Juniors for the Tier 2A for Japan, and they won gold, which was good for them. It was expected they would win. I'm still currently working with him. A lot of stuff we do online, whether that's me sending him drills or him sending me video packs and me kind of breaking them down for him. Uh, but right now it's a little bit undecided where he's going with it. I've advised him to move to North America when he was 12. I thought that was kind of the latest cutoff for him to get used to the contact and the pace of the play here. But they're pretty strict on school over there, and they wanted him to finish that. So right now, it's looking like potentially he'll play in the USHL. That's where he's kind of thinking of going. But I don't know the latest, honestly. I don't talk to his dad too much about this stuff. I just advise him on what to do, and then the ball's in his court to pull the trigger on any of those opportunities. But I hope that he really follows through on it because he's put in a lot of work.
We'll get into sort of how the game has changed, but the route and the path that players take to the NHL has also changed, and the USHL is becoming more and more of a viable route, even though it's not maybe the first choice for a lot of people. But it'll be interesting to see if he does choose that route and how far he can go with it. And talking about the game changing, obviously, smaller bodies and more skill is becoming, more and more of a reality. And we'll get into that here as we continue our conversation. But let's talk a little bit about the birth of what you do now. How did you start doing your online stuff? And was there a moment that you could point to that was a clear sign that things were taking off and that you had an audience and that this could become something?
Yeah, good question. So it started off when I was working at the UBC hockey school. And in between my lessons, we would have this half an hour ice slot where the ice would just sit there. So my buddy was a goalie, so I'd set up my phone on a milk crate and just do shootout moves. And the first shootout video was called Creative Shootout Dangles, episode 1. And it featured a lot of moves that people hadn't seen before, a lot of creative new moves, and people really liked it. And that's where it all started, was just with that. And when I broke into Instagram back then, it was just pictures. So when it came on where they had 15-second videos, I was posting 15-second videos of shootout moves people hadn't seen before. And that was getting a lot of shares, a lot of likes, a lot of people talking. And that's really the birth of it. It was kind of really good timing, but also just kind of giving people a new spin on hockey. And I think that's kind of where it all started.
And a lot has happened since then. You've made videos where
Yeah.
you dress up as an old man and take some guys to school, and you've had back and forth with NHLers. I think, what was it, Alex Barkov of the Panthers, and are you in awe of any of what has happened? And is there one thing that stands out that you still can't believe has happened?
Yeah, I think I mean every day I'm kind of in awe of the position I'm in. I'm really thankful for it because in high school my dream was just to have a job in hockey at all, anything related to ice hockey. But I just never thought it was possible. And going through school, you're almost told, think more realistically. And so yeah, right now it's like I look back on it every day and I'm like, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this for a living. And in terms of things I just couldn't believe, I think the Barkov thing, doing the shootout on a beach, with him was pretty crazy. I did a commercial with Molson Canadian where we flew on a helicopter to a rink that was only accessible by helicopter, and then they flew the Stanley Cup to us. Like things like that, you're just like, oh my god, like I can't believe I'm involved in these kind of projects. So
Yeah.
it's a wild ride, but it's a lot of fun.
A lot of NHLers won't even get to do that kind of thing with the Stanley Cup, so you got a leg up on them there.
Exactly, and I touched it, so I feel like.
So you got a chance to play hockey in the GTHL in Toronto growing up. Where did you play? Which team did you play for?
So I played for the North York Knights AA team for
Okay.
the majority of it. Yeah.
And so playing hockey at that type of level, it must like I got a chance to cover the GTHL many years ago now, and seeing the skill levels of the guys that were in that league at 15, 16 years old. Where did the dangles come from? Like I don't remember there being a lot of time in those games to try and pull those moves out. So where did it all come from?
Yeah, it all came from, I had a line mate actually. His name was Jake Mooney. He was my centerman, and back then, certainly all the years I played with him, he was the best stick handler on the team. And he actually ended up leaving the AA after 18 and playing D1 college. He was just such an amazing player, and me and him would always talk about like new moves to create or how to apply certain moves. And for me personally, in Toronto, I lived 5 minutes from an outdoor rink, Withrow Park, and I would use that rink nonstop. Like I would skip school, I'd go before school or after school. I'd find any time I could to get on that rink and learn. And they would freeze in the winter, so you'd have ice, and then the summer they'd have this great smooth pavement. I'd get on my rollerblades, and I became obsessed with Pavel Datsuk, and he was a guy who was always manipulating people with his stick handling moves and always finding new ways to get around defenders. And I would watch his videos. I'd go to the park and I would try those new moves out, and I would try and make up moves myself. And I would always try and study, like, how do you apply these moves? When do you use them? So that's kind of where it started. And that was probably when I was like 12 or 13 that I got really, really into stick handling.
It's interesting that you just told that story, because my next two questions were about the name Pavel, and then also how you got into the stick handling. And I was assuming it might be Pavel Bure, because you're a couple of years younger than Zam and I, from as far as I can tell. And us being on the West Coast here, our Pavel is Pavel Bure growing up, because he was the guy to watch when we were kids. But the game, back in the day wasn't necessarily the skilled game that it is, here today. It wasn't like what we were talking about, how the game is evolved to. It was more clutch and grab. It was more physical. Did you, during that time, when you were watching the NHL, did you gravitate towards the skill guys? I'm talking about the Fedorovs, the Kovalevs, or the Datsuks, or the Bures. Like, who did you gravitate towards? I'm asking you if you're part Russian. That's basically what I'm asking you.
Yeah, I know. You think I'm part Russian. I'm full Canadian. But I mean, those names you just listed, I mean, those were the guys I gravitated towards, and I would love watching them. I mean, you mentioned Kovalev. Like, his hands for his time was second to none, what he was doing. And Fedorov, same thing. And then you evolve that into Pavel Datsuk. And it's like watching these guys, it was just great to see guys use creativity in such an effective way, because that's always the thing with creativity is people think like, it's good to be creative, but it's tough to apply that. Like, you have to be very smart and know when to apply that. And these guys just knew where and when to apply these moves. And Pavel Bure was a little bit before my time, and I didn't watch him too much, just being from Toronto. But it's funny because when I watched a video, and that Datsuk move that became so famous on the shootout, so one of my subscribers had sent me a video of Pavel Bure doing that in a game. And it looked a little bit different. And it was just on a rebound, so he didn't come just one-on-one with the goalie. But it got me thinking, like, Pavel Datsuk was definitely watching, Pavel Bure, and kind of learning from him. And it's always this like evolution from one generation to the next. And I mean, I watch guys like Matt Barzell and Pedersen. I see so much Datsuk in those guys, and those guys have commented that they were huge Datsuk fans before. So it's great to see the evolution there.
Yeah, the passing of the Pavel torch, so to speak.
Exactly.
One of my favorite Datsuk moves, and Kovalev did this, time to time too, and maybe in different ways. And it's more of an underrated move. It's not on the goalie; it's on another player. But just putting the puck under someone's stick and then going around them. You didn't see that, 10 years ago. It was trying to go around them with your body or go through their legs, but just moving the puck and then kind of going around someone, that was something that when I first saw that, I was like, I wouldn't even think of doing that. But, when you're on the backhand, kind of dropping the puck underneath someone's stick in between their feet, those guys just made that normal. And now it's certainly something that is a part of the repertoire of those, the Barzals and the Pedersens. So it was cool to see how things evolved. For me, I remember seeing the Michigan goal for the first time and practicing in my garage, and then I saw Robbie Schremp kind of put the puck between his legs in a shootout and then lift it onto a stick and spin. That's when I was hooked. Was there a specific moment for you when you saw someone do something that you've never seen before, and you described some of the Datsuk stuff that really pushed you towards being more creative in what you did?
Yeah, I mean, number one would be Mike Clegg, the guy who did the Michigan first. I remember I think it was 8 years old at the time, at practice, just trying to scoop it. And in my brain, I remember thinking, this is impossible. I can't do it. I don't understand this. Now you see 5-year-olds do it with ease today. But that was certainly one of those moments where you're like, wow, here's a move I never thought was possible. Now I can do it. And that gets you thinking, what else can I do? Then you got the Robbie Schremps. Rob Heisey was another good one. He did that between the legs 360 scoop, the first guy to do that. You see things like that, and it just gets you excited because as a kid, for me, hockey was a form of exercise and a form of fun, a way to express yourself. So going to the park and trying new moves was such a fun thing for me to do as a kid, kind of just like a hobby. So watching those guys pull it off and then trying it myself was just so fun.
Where do you think the game is? Well, not right now because there's no games on right now. But where do you think the game has been over the last couple of years? Less clutching and grabbing, less fighting, more skill, more speed. Uh, do you miss more of that physical play, or is this kind of playing into your brand of being the stick handling specialist? We're seeing a lot more of that being executed these days.
Yeah, I mean it's certainly playing right into what I do, and that's another kind of lucky timing thing for me as a stick handling specialist. Stick handling is more effective today than it ever has been, and the need for good stick handlers, whether you're on the first line or the fourth line, it doesn't matter. Puck possession is a key statistic in hockey, and your ability to control the puck and make the right play with it, your first touch, is super important. So coming in there, it's certainly playing into what I do. I wouldn't say I miss the physical play. Obviously, I love seeing people bang bodies and, these big hits like you saw in the 90s. But I always tell people, if you're a fan of the game, you have to think of players' lives after the game is over. And I was a huge Paul Kariya fan, and seeing his career cut short in the way it was and the way, hockey kind of didn't resonate well with him after he retired, didn't sit well with me at all. And I know firsthand from my buddies, these concussions can really mess you up for life. So I don't miss that too much. I love what the NHL is doing to keep players safe, not only during the game, but after they're done playing the game. I love that. And I certainly love the fact that we have more room for creativity and skill to shine through.
What was your reaction this past season then, seeing what was the Michigan goal turn into the Svechnikov goal, and now seeing that happen in the NHL regularly? And you talked about Elias Pettersson, and he's said that he's going to try it, and I think he tried in the game but bobbled the puck a little bit. But to me, that's music to my ears, and magic to my eyes. Do you think we're in this sweet spot now, or can we keep going further in the skilled direction before it maybe is maybe too skilled and less of the hockey that we once knew, right?
Yeah, no, I think we're going to keep going up in terms of creativity. Obviously, there's going to be a limit to how creative you can be. And I always tell people there's, useless creativity. Like you say, like, doing a backflip on a shootout move, that would be creative, but it's useless. And then there's fun, like, tangible creativity, like stuff you can actually apply in a game. So that stuff is going to certainly go up. And I mean, my reaction when that Svechnikov goal went in, my phone blew up, like the amount of people DMing me, because I was the guy who's posting the attempts and telling people, like, this is a goal that is going to go in, like either this year or next. It's just an elevated wraparound. There's an application in the game, and guys were trying it. There's probably, I think, before this year, last year, there's probably 20 to 23 attempts and 0 goals, but so many close calls. So when Fetch nailed that, I was going nuts. I was like, yes, like it's a huge moment for the game too, because it's almost like he's giving other people permission to try it, by showing this is possible. That opens up people's eyes and makes them think this is a serious move. And then he did it again. And then Forsberg followed him up. So it's one of those things. Once it goes in once, the floodgates start opening up.
Now, Shahid's a center. I'm a defenseman growing up. So we hate seeing those goals. Now,
no, I've tried it in a game multiple times, so I don't hate it whatsoever.
No, yeah, but so now that we're seeing those in the NHL, what's the way for it to, not to stop those attempts, but how do you defend that?
You know what? It's easy to defend, but it relies on you being in the right position. And if you see the attempts that people are trying them in, like what the successful ones, they're attempts where that space is open, where a defender is either off his check or the defender switch, but they forget to take the other guy. Something happens which opens up room where the defender in front isn't there. Defending it is as easy as just tapping the stick. You tap the shaft or the blade, the puck's going to fall off. That part is super easy. And if you watch Tyler Ennis's last attempt, he had tried it and the defender was in the right position. He just tapped his stick. It's game over. So it's super easy to defend, but it relies on you being in the right position. So if you are a person using the move, trying to use the move, you don't want to use the move if a defender is in, a pretty good position to touch your stick too much, but you want to look for that opening. But just make sure you're in the right position if you want to defend it, and then make contact with the stick. Don't go for the body. Go for the stick if you're looking to defend this move.
Let's just hope the NHL, which is not the NFL, it's not the no fun league, but it certainly had a reputation of being no fun at times, doesn't find a way to outlaw it. Because I mean, if they just look at their social coverage of these goals alone, they'll know that it's good for the game. So I don't see that happening, but let's hope that they don't do that. You talked about Elias Pettersson and Barzal. There's so many skilled players, Svechnikov. Let's talk about your favorite players in the game right now. Who blows you away when you see them? Even Pavel Barber, who can do anything with the puck on his stick. Who blows you away when you're watching them?
Yeah, I mean, all these guys are unreal, and for me, it's pretty easy for these guys to blow me away because they're doing it in the best league in the world, and I'm doing it in my backyard or wherever I'm at. So all these guys are incredible. But the main guys that are blowing me away, obviously McDavid. Everything that guy does is on another level. Nathan McKinnon is up there. Crosby has been up there my entire life. And then Matt Barzal and Elias Pettersson would round out the top 5 for me. These guys are just in their own rights, very skilled players with the puck, but also just have other ways of being effective. I mean, you talk about Crosby, puck protection and edge work, ridiculous. Nathan McKinnon, his explosiveness, his shot power, and his stick handling abilities. Matt Barzal's skating abilities is insane. And then Pettersson, like, he's got an unbelievable shot. And then all the skills Datsuk had before that and the amount of creativity he has. It's so fun to watch those guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who thought Elias Pettersson had 100-mile-an-hour slap shot?
Yeah, exactly.
In that 5'11" frame.
He's 5'11", and when he came into the league, he was like 165 or something, and I'm 5'8" and I'm 160, and I think I clock in at like 80 miles per hour max on my shot. So I mean, his form on his shot and the amount of whip he gets is incredible.
Right. The form and the technology is one thing, right? And so that helps the shot for sure. But I wonder what your thoughts are about technology when it comes to stick handling. You know, a lot of hockey players, including myself for a while, one, because I couldn't afford the one-piece sticks, but two, because I just loved the feel of the puck on the wood stick. How has the one piece, you know, changed stick handling in your mind, and then also what technologies are coming that will sort of help puck control, you know, in the coming years? Do you know of any changes to the technology that will help with that?
I don't know any technology in terms of sticks that are going to help with puck control. I do know that blades come in different stiffness. Now, stiffer blade usually means harder shot, but less feel on the puck. And then you have the more forgiving blades that are more for puck control. You get more feel on it. That's the only thing in terms of technology. I was in the same boat as you. I couldn't afford any one piece sticks. I was the guy picking out broken one piece sticks out of the trash can, cutting them off and putting replacement blades in. That was my way of having the high end stick. So I never was able to afford them. And now when I'm done playing, I have them all sent to me and I get to luckily be able to try them all out. But obviously, like the weight of the sticks, number one, just being able to move them faster, but just the feel on the blade compared to the wood sticks is second to none. Like it's incredible, like how you can keep your head up now and just know exactly where it is on the blade, how responsive these blades are, and just how light these things are. It's insane.
Okay.
I still keep my 50-30 on me. It's still sitting in my garage.
I got one too. And I was a Naslund fan, so Naslund was one of the last guys that had a wood stick. So I was like, if he can have a wood stick, I can have a wood stick too. But
That's right. Hey.
I ended up switching, and it helped my shot a lot. And so it's that sacrifice so that you got to make. Hey, before we let you go, I did want to touch on sort of the business side of things, you know, a little bit here. Obviously, you've turned, you know, your skill and your passion for hockey into a business here, and you know, that doesn't come, you know, no real successful business story comes without you know, a story of perseverance and bumps along the road. What were some of your bumps along the road, and you know, what sacrifices did you have to make to make this work for you?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of sacrifices, a lot of time, you know, a lot of work, you know, to get the skills I've gotten to be able to understand it. It was fun for me, so I never considered it work, but I spent a lot of hours like on the rink, not only doing the skills, but also I had a notebook I'd always carry with me and just like would write things down, things I would learn, anything to help me build consistency and more understanding of the skill. Um, so in that respect, a whole lot of sacrifice in terms of how much time I've really put into that. But again, I just never look at it as sacrifice because I love doing it. I'm really passionate about it. Bumps on the road, not too many. You get a lot of people, you know, even some friends, you know, telling you like, you know, YouTube isn't the way, or you know, it's like, you know, you need to be realistic. All this stuff. Like I was a guy, I dropped out of university after the second year because I knew I wasn't going to like what I got into, and I needed to figure out a lot more about myself before I commit all this time. And the one thing I never liked too much about the school system was that they didn't encourage risk too much. It was always like play it safe and you know, do it within the system and, you know, abide by this. And there wasn't a lot of room for creativity for me. And for me, I'm a very creative person who needs to think outside of the box and, you know, fall down, make mistakes, and pick myself back up in terms of, you know, making myself learn this stuff more. So I think those are the main things, you know, just being told that it's not feasible, it's not possible, and all that stuff. But I think all along I knew that there was a huge market for this. It was something I wanted badly online as a kid. So I'm happy to fill that role for people.
Absolutely. And you talk about risk. You know, one of the risks that you might have had when you started was having all your eggs in one basket, you know, relying on the YouTube and the Instagram to always be your bread and butter. And obviously you've got a business, you know, with the coaching that you are I assume, you know, successful with now. But Where did that come from? Did that come naturally? Was that a very conscious decision for you with some business training and some advice, or did the clients just start coming to you and it was obvious to you to make that move?
Yeah, definitely the clients just started coming from the videos, and I'm the least qualified businessman you'll ever meet. I know absolutely nothing about business, but going through this for the past 5 years, I've learned so much about business, and I've had a lot of great conversation, a lot of great role models that I've spoken to. Certainly made a lot of bonehead mistakes and lost a lot of money along the way that I could have made probably more, but that's part of the process, and those are lessons I learned quite deeply when the bad things do happen to you. But I think certainly it was just things kind of unfolded without really planning it too much. And it goes to show you, if you do a really good job and you really provide value, people will see that value and hire you. And that's all I've really aimed to do.
And who are some of the guys that you're working with now, whether it be pros that we know or guys that are coming up, or on both sides, are you working with any top end female talent as well?
Yeah, so I do work with some girls here in the Vancouver area that are pretty good players. You wouldn't know their names, but I probably have a 9 or 10 female clients, which I think 5 years ago just wouldn't exist. It's great to see the explosion of the female game. The NHL guys I work with are Charlie Coyle on the Bruins, Jonathan Taves, and Vertan I worked with 2 years ago. I didn't get to work with him this summer. And then Warren Fogle was working with him to, break down his breakaways and stuff like that over video there.
That's great. And do you see your business growing? Do you see the inquiries coming more? Where do you see your next steps being business wise? And then I'm also curious about the technology in terms of social media. As you said, YouTube was a place to be. Instagram became a good place for video. TikTok is around now. Do you find yourself open to adapting to wherever the people go? So kind of a two-part question, where the business is going to go and then where you're going to go online.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly see the business is just keep going up. I'm getting way more inquiries from pro players than I ever have. I think before, like 3 years ago, and what back then didn't get any, and the past 2 years have gotten quite a few, which is great because those are the guys whose opinions I really care about. Guys who are actually in the arena, going into battle every day, who see value in what you do and want to be better. I love working with those guys, and I want to make more time to work with players like that, because to me, that's the ultimate challenge, is finding ways to make a player like Jonathan Taves better, who you think would be impossible. He's very good in all areas, but you have to approach it with the mindset that they have, is, you can always be better. You can always find ways to improve, especially the way the game's going with this new young crop coming in. You got to find ways to get better. And then what was the second part of your question?
So social media and online technology, you moved you do your YouTube stuff, but you added Instagram to the repertoire. And I was talking about TikTok making its way into the forefront now. Are you happy with what you've got in terms of an online following? Do you find the need to follow the people around wherever they go?
Yeah, I certainly don't feel the need to follow them around wherever they go. I think for my social media feeds to be effective, I kind of gotta march to the beat of my own drum and do what I'm good at, and just be appreciative of the people who want to join me on that journey. Certainly, you mentioned TikTok. That's a big difference between all the other social media feeds in terms of what content does well, and I love that challenge. I love again, just as like a hobby, like finding ways to grow social media accounts, finding what gets people entertained, what people want in terms of content, is always fun for me as a guy who loves to challenge his creativity. So that's been a good, fun challenge. But I think in the end, I always want my social media feeds to be kind of free advertising to what I do in my online or in my real life training, and to just become one of the best coaches I can be.
So
So
go ahead, Zach.
yeah, so growing up in Toronto, now being in Metro Vancouver, are you? Which team are you following? Are you a Canucks fan, or are you still a diehard Leafs fan? Because you're probably getting it on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I love Pacific time zone because I get to watch a lot more hockey than I did in the Eastern time. But I watch more games of the players I train. So I watch a lot of Boston games. I watch a lot of Hawks games. Definitely watch a ton of Canucks games and Leaf games as well. I grew up a Ducks fan, believe it or not. I love the movies, and I was a big Paul Kariya, Teemu Selanne fan. I don't follow them as much anymore, but I was a huge fan of them back then. And then, the Avalanche, I love watching them just because of Nathan McKinnon. I watch a lot of those games. So really just kind of, you know, watching games now from a different lens, trying to become a really good coach. So I'm watching what the best players are doing. And I think for me, the most fun one is that Boston top line, Marchand, Bergeron, Pasternak, watching what those guys do day in, day out. There's like so many things you can learn from those guys.
Absolutely. So let's end off then on and what people can learn from you. What's the Pavel Barber philosophy? What piece of advice can you give to young hockey players and older ones alike to take the next step in their stick handling and play with the puck? What's the most important thing? What's one thing you can leave us with?
Yeah, I think whatever you're doing in your training, just realize you're always trying to be more consistent with what you're doing. So when you are training, you want feedback from everything that you do. That way you have a platform to kind of build off of, a foundation to build off of. And when you are training, don't compare yourself to other people. I know people hear that all the time, but it's so important. You want to be better than your former self. If you could be 1% better than you were yesterday, that is going to dramatically improve you come 1 year, come 3 years, 5 years. And just knowing that pushing the comfort zone is very important. But if you push like way too far beyond the comfort zone, it's unhelpful. It doesn't get you better faster. There's no shortcut to this talent building, the skill building challenge. You gotta find ways to be a little bit past the comfort zone. That's the sweet spot. If you want a really good book to read The Talent Code. It's a book that studied people from all walks of life, mathematicians, musicians, athletes, and was finding patterns in the way they trained, and they were able to build their skill faster than other people, which I highly recommend you give a read.
Awesome. Well, thanks for spending some time with us today. Like we said, we're right now, as we're recording this, all cooped up at home, trying to, fend off this COVID-19 pandemic. So it's great to talk some hockey, even if there's no hockey going on. And let's all hope we can get back to watching and playing as soon as possible.
Awesome. Yeah, no, thanks for having me, guys. And yeah, stay safe and hope this all passes soon.
All right.
Thanks, Barber. We'll hope to see some hockey soon.
All right, bud. Sounds good.
And that was Pavel Barber, also known as Brandon Barber, but he made it clear he's Pavel now, and well earned, right? Like if you've seen any of his videos, you see how super talented and skilled he is, and certainly well earned in terms of branding himself. He's got a huge following online.
Oh, for sure, and he even said most people just call him Barber. Pavel,
yeah,
Brandon, sure. It's just Barber.
Yeah, Barber.
And that interview, just for me to make it to that interview was a challenge in its own right.
That one, you recorded that one in the car, right?
That one was in the car in a gas station parking lot in Hope.
Yeah, yeah, and that was one of our first recordings, actually.
Yeah,
if not the first, and
no, I think it was number 3.
Number 3 after Nabil and Hoos, right? Yeah,
yeah, exactly. And it was just at the beginning of the April long weekend, the Easter long weekend, and I was late to leave the Okanagan and was hoping that I would be in Abbotsford before we were recording it, but turned out that we were about 2/3 of the way there and had to stop and record it on the road. But it worked out. Luckily, technology was okay for that interview, and luckily I had my trusty iPhone to be able to do that interview with. So luckily, yeah, it worked out, I think.
Yeah, one of your more exotic backdrops, right? For our phase 1 here.
the seat cushion behind me. That's about
Yeah.
it.
Well, you're right by the water. Oh no, you're in Hope, so maybe a bit
No.
far from the water, but you came from the water at least.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah. I was happy that I was able to make that interview, and oh, look, we can't forget to thank Imran again for joining us last week for Unanchored and for that chat with Sunny, and thanks again for Sunny for that chat, and we're looking forward to definitely having Imran back on the pod again, and it was fun to have three people have a chat.
I think it was probably more fun for our listeners than it was for us. One, because they're probably tired of our voices, and two, Imran can be a pain. No, I'm just kidding. We had fun with Imran. And it's three people is a different dynamic, right? I find it to be just more like friends hanging out, whereas you and I, it still kind of feels like we're hosting a show, right? But once you throw a third person in there, it's like all the planning you can do is kind of thrown out the window, because you just can't control what so many people are going to say and where the conversation's going to go, right?
Oh, exactly. And that's kind of the fun part of doing live programming. And well, we're not really doing live, but like we're essentially recording live to tape in a way. But it's fun that way, and it makes it more unpredictable and more dynamic, and I look forward to us doing that again.
Yeah, for sure, and not just with Imran, but with others who have specific interests in the topics that we'll be talking about with some other guests upcoming. And speaking of lives, like I've been thinking about doing some of these shows live as well, and we can see how we can make that work. Taking it on the road, some physically distant on location shows, that could be fun too. We've done that before with other things, and it's
back in the old press box days.
Press box days. And were you with us when we went to the Tampa Bay Lightning training camp in Victoria? Yeah. So that was good fun too. One of our first hockey experiences.
and we also did some Canucks pregame from the Press Box Pub.
Yeah, exactly.
On Hastings Street, Hastings and Renfrew, and those were fun. And I think it would be. I've had some other people suggest that as well, that it would be good to take it on the road and get an audience involved, to come to the location and bring a guest live and do all that. And maybe we can do that over the next little while. Somebody's
gonna to put up for the rentals. I'm down for it. But anyways, that's where sponsorships come in. We're talking big things, right? We'll get there. But like Sam said, wanted to thank everybody for tuning in to our first batch of interviews here. We're really looking forward to continuing this and taking you along for the ride.
Yeah, and before we wrap it up, don't forget to follow our social channels at Unanchored Pod on Twitter, on Instagram at Unanchored Podcast, Facebook Unanchored Podcast, and don't forget you can find all the episodes on unanchoredpodcast.ca.
All right, Sam. Well, this was fun. We'll do it again soon, and until then, we'll see you later.
Thanks a lot. We'll see you then.